Thank you very much, Asti. Good afternoon, everyone in Indonesia, and good morning to those joining from the UK. Welcome to the latest BritCham Climate Change Focus Group webinar. Today, we will explore a sector that's preoccupying the minds of government regulators, municipalities, producers, and increasingly consumers, amongst other groups. The landfills in Indonesia are in many instances approaching full capacity, and Indonesia also continues to struggle with plastic waste pollution, particularly in its rivers and oceans. As the consumer economy continues to expand, these challenges will only continue to get more severe. The government has a strategy of developing many waste-to-energy projects, but for a variety of reasons, typically related to tipping fees and feed-in tariffs, realisation of these projects has been slow, though recent adjustments to some of these financial inputs will hopefully finally see some of these projects over the line. In addition, in recent months particularly, there has been renewed interest from investors in the recycling sector. On the consumer side, many FMCG companies have announced aggressive sustainability targets, including but not limited to be plastic neutral before the end of the next decade, or 2030. As a representative of a company involved in the recycling sector, I recognise the importance of technology in both planning locations for strategic investments, as well as crucially supporting the existing collection structure and systems to improve the collection of materials, and by doing so, improving the livelihoods of those involved in the sector. A subsequent webinar may focus on the processing technology that can be deployed, but today we will focus on two technologies, and forgive me to our guest participants, that use big data analysis and digitization to help support the development of the waste management and recycling sector. I hope our two guests will be able to explain that in a bit more detail. Firstly, from Scotland in the UK, we welcome Michael Groves, the founder of Scotland-based Topolytics, a company that's pioneering the use of data analytics to make waste visible, verifiable, and valuable. Since 2019, their technology has been used by the UK government to track hundreds of millions of waste movements across the UK. Each one of their customers gains actionable insights that benefit from an additive view of the waste system across multiple enterprises, sectors, cities, regions, countries, or even continents. Michael is a geographer with a PhD in aerial and satellite Earth observation, with experience in environmental management, sustainable forest management, and sustainable reporting. He is the founder of Topolytics. He's also no stranger to Indonesia, I believe, having worked here, I think, in the 90s. And today, Michael joins us from Edinburgh. Also joining the panel is Andi Moehammad Ichsan, we'll call him back Ichsan, the CEO and co-founder of Sulawesi-based Octopus, a circular economy platform that currently manages waste collection in Makassar and Bali. Octopus provides real-time data dashboard for brands, FMCG producers to track and collect their waste while giving incentives to local waste stakeholders via their platform. Pak Ichsan got his MBA from Bartley Haas School of Business, and in 2011 he started his reverse logistics company, giving service solutions for the Indonesian Police Department. He founded Octopus in 2018 in Makassar, and as I said, has expanded operations to Bali, and I think in the near future, probably Jakarta. So today we're going to hear from Scotland and Sulawesi, although Andi, I believe, is currently in Bali. I will hand over shortly to Michael, who will explain more about Topolytics, and then we will ask Pak Ichsan to take over and tell us about the Octopus story. Thereafter, we will move into the Q&A. Many people ask for copies of the presentation, but actually on the recording, you will be able to see it on the YouTube link. So firstly, welcome, gentlemen. How are you? Well, I hope.
Ainsley.
Yeah.
All well. Thank you.
Yeah, good to see you. So Michael, without any further ado, let's get into it. And can we start with you? Thank you very much.
Sure. Just share my screen. Okay. Hi everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are. Thank you for that intro, Ainsley. You've sort of stolen my thunder. So it's great to be back in Indonesia. As Ainsley said, I worked in the late 90s in forestry. So I sort of ran around sort of forestry operations all over Indonesia and the region. And there I am standing next to a dipterocarp, and so it's really, really great to be back, albeit virtually. So as Ainsley said, so Topolytics, we're a sort of pure sort of data aggregation and analytics business, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. But fundamentally, what we're trying to do is make the world's waste, and by the world I mean the world, much more visible, because we don't see that there's a huge amount of transparency in the kind of waste system, and we think that that kind of works against the waste system operating efficiently and effectively. And by making it more visible, we can build more trust in the data. And ultimately, what we're trying to do is enable sort of extraction of value, both from the material itself, and by waste we mean all waste materials, whether it be plastic, metals, cardboard, hazardous waste, construction waste, etc. But also make value for all those players in that system, whether they be the waste producer themselves, the recycler and the processor of that material, or the regulator. And why are we doing that? Because clearly at the moment, the system on a sort of global basis is, I think, suboptimal, and still we're sort of losing too much of that material. You know, clearly a lot of that material is going to landfill or to waste dumps, or at worst is just sort of disappearing and leaking out of the system into the environment. So that's what we're trying to do, and we're approaching it as a sort of big global systemic kind of challenge, but we think that there's a huge opportunity there to make the system work better at scale. So one of the challenges to doing that clearly is that system of materials sort of movements is really kind of complex. And now clearly different countries, the commercial players, the government players, the regulations, the materials themselves will differ. Of course they will, but fundamentally, you've still got a whole range of different sort of movements of materials, a whole range of different sort of companies and organizations generating that waste, different organizations moving or processing or disposing of that material, and that material gets mixed, gets contaminated. And so it's a really sort of complex kind of system, but it's a constant flow of materials. So that material is constantly moving through this system. So this is what we're trying to get a better handle on. And so what we're trying to do is bring that to life and make it real. And one of the ways we're doing that is literally just sort of mapping the movements of those materials and trying to understand what those materials are, what's the value of those materials, what's the quality of that material, what happens to that material, how far is that material moved. So that's really where the sort of the big data piece comes in from our point of view. So the way we do that is we've built over the last few years a data platform that we can ingest and we can process significant quantities of waste data. And I'll come on to the sources of that data in a sec. So as a team, we're really sort of triangulating on three things. So we've got people that have run waste and recycling companies. We sort of understand the way the circular economy aspects work as well. We've then got software development, and we've then got data science. And our sweet spot is where those three things kind of intersect. So I guess we operate in what some people call smart waste or waste tech, which is a sort of growing bit of the overall kind of waste management industry. You know, Andi is part of that. There's a whole range of different companies doing machine learning, doing robotics, doing machine vision. There's all sorts of activities, sensors, for example, bin sensors. So we're within that marketplace. And so when I talk about aggregation, what I mean is we pull data in from many different sources in many different forms. So if you think about the data that's generated on waste at the moment, a lot of that data might be generated through, through sort of literally just sort of pieces of paper, which are then put into spreadsheets at one end. or it may be in some instances developed through apps or software, like Andi's kind of got an amazing kind of system for sort of capturing information on individual sort of bottles or containers. It may be coming from sensors, so increasingly you have sensors attached to bins or for asset tracking or for measuring the content of bins. So it comes from a range of different sources. And what we do is, what we're really good at doing is being able to manage all of that data at scale in order to then provide answers for our customers on what's happening to that material. So a lot of the data we see is what we're really interested in doing is getting to the most granular data that we can on individual movements or shipments of waste, what that waste is, how much of that waste is there, when was that material moved. And as I say, that data could be coming at us in a number of different ways. And then once we've got it into the system, we can start to sort of build it and present it back to our customers to help them to answer some of the questions. So our customers may be organizations and companies that are generating waste, so waste producers, and they want to know what's happening to that material. They want to understand the cost and the resource efficiency attached to that material. They want to think about how they might recover that material. They want to be more transparent on what's happening to that material. They want to feed into their, if you like, their sort of greenhouse gas reporting. So there's a lot of different drivers there, but fundamentally, a lot of the time it is about following the money. It's about cost efficiency and resource efficiency. And so what we're able to then do is sort of present some of these insights back to them, which allow them to make some of these decisions. So, for example, we're working on a project with the global software company SAP, where we're taking data from some of their consumer product customers, and we're sort of trying to understand what's happening to the flow of that material. So post-consumer packaging, whether it be glass, whether it be metals, whether it be plastic, and we're sort of playing that back to them so they've got a better understanding of where they can make interventions in their own kind of waste system and within the broader waste system, not just in the UK, but internationally. But then obviously there is a sort of value chain here. We're talking about sort of downstream sort of material system, and it is a downstream value chain. So you've got the waste producer where the waste starts, but you've then got the companies that are moving, that are processing, that are recovering, that are recycling or disposing of that material. They're part of that value chain. So again, the data that comes into WasteMap, we're able to then sort of generate insights for the industry itself. So, whether it's understanding what that map of materials looks like, whether it's understanding where they can kind of best target their kind of sales and marketing efforts, where they can best optimize the sort of the investments in new capacity, or where they can add value to their customers. And so again, we're working with a number of recyclers and brokers who are really trying to sort of get a better handle on their own data, but also use that data better to make some better decisions, both for themselves and also present information back to their customers. And then I mentioned the regulators, and Ainsley touched on this earlier on. I mean, of course, the regulators are increasingly, of course, looking at how they can then best get a better handle on the waste system in their own areas of jurisdiction. Now, specifically in the UK, we're working with the Departments for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs and all of the national UK environmental regulators. And in the UK government has mandated that there will be a digital waste tracking system. So all waste movements in the UK will be captured digitally. Now, again, we're talking about all of the waste companies reporting into the system. So their data is coming from many different sort of sources, whether it be from spreadsheets, whether it be from third-party software, whether it be from sensors. So again, the prototype system that we're designing there is basically pulling that data in from those many different sources in order to allow the regulator to make better policy decisions, to understand the flow of materials across the country, and to a big driver there is reducing waste crime. So that's a project that's ongoing at the moment in the UK, but we see that we see that there is starting to, the idea of digitizing the sort of waste regulation systems, I don't think will stop with the UK. And so that's, I think, pretty well summarizes, I think, what we do. But obviously, we're really happy to take questions as we go on. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. We will take questions later. I would just now like to hand over to Pak Ichsan, who will give us a benefit of his experience here in Indonesia.
Okay. Good afternoon, good evening, gentlemen. So yeah, let me start with this. Indonesia currently facing waste crisis, right? We produce 63 million tons of waste per year, which is the weight more than 1,300 double-decker buses. So we're seeing this as a huge opportunities, billion-dollar market value opportunities. Well, recently, Indonesia government released a multi-action plan to tackle 70% of plastic waste by 2024. One of the regulation is pushing producers or brands to track and collect their post-consumer products. And the Ministry of Maritime and Investment Office requires the brands to give an annual report for that. And in 2021, Indonesia will start doing excise tax for new plastic packaging based on these reports. Doing recycle in Indonesia poses some challenges. The 81% of household waste is unsorted. The bad quality recyclables, price fluctuation, and the 8 layers of recycling actors cause inefficient process. So this is what we do. We simplify the process. We improve recyclables quality. We reduce price fluctuation. We increase the livelihood of local waste collectors. We modernize local waste collection businesses in one ecosystem. We provide mobile apps for the key stakeholders. The first one is the brand consumer as our user. We're giving an easy to use and free of charge service for them to dispose their post-consumer product or packaging. We're even giving them reward points for every single piece of it. And the points can be redeemed into a discount at 52 F&B merchants in Makassar and Bali. The second one is the waste collectors. As our pelestari, we call them pelestari. We're giving them price transparency in an open market price so they can choose wherever they want to sell the PCPs that already collected from the users to any local waste collection businesses that already connected to our ecosystem. And the third one is the local waste collection businesses or our checkpoints. We call them the checkpoints. We provide a mobile app that could record their transactions and also they can set the PCP's price at their convenience. Of course, we set the minimum buying price to ensure there are no leakage between the transaction between the checkpoints and the pelestari. And this is our data dashboard, a real-time data dashboard for brands or producers to track their EPR or extended producer responsibilities target. And currently we're operating in Makassar and Bali with 3,800 daily disposal orders, 1,000 checkpoints, and 2,700 pelestari in our ecosystem. We also certify our collection center. We're partnering with the one that can fulfill our standard terms. The first one is they have to have some minimum working capital to absorb or buying PCP from our checkpoints. And they also need to have the proper sorting facilities and the multiple handling SOP for different type of PCP. So Octopus is not just about a business startup. It's way more than that. We give incentives for our users for keeping their PCP, so it will reduce the waste pollutions. We help local government to solve social problems by creating a new job opportunity. We train our pelestari, we verify them, we're giving them access for health insurance and bank accounts. Recently, one of our pelestari just earned 10.4 million rupiah or 500 pounds in one single month. We leverage local waste collection businesses. Now they can have access for capital loans from bank or any financial institutions so they can grow their business. So yeah, well, Octopus is a solution for brand or producers to track, collect, and give incentives to local waste stakeholders. We're easy to expand since we're a digital platform. We grow organically in only 7 months of operation in 2 cities because our ecosystem loves our apps. We provide a transparent and accountable reporting system for the brands or producers. Next. So this is what makes us different. We use per piece instead of kilograms because it's easy to track and also give convenience for our user and our pelestari. We verify our stakeholders with the IDs, all of the key stakeholders, and we have a waste data dashboard. So it's a win-win solution for every waste stakeholders, for every single cities, especially in Indonesia. Next. Yeah, so that's Octopus, the digital of circular economy platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Ichsan. Could you maybe go back to your slide which showed the process and just explain, who's paying who?
Oh, yeah, sure.
And, the certified collection centers, are they your certified collection centers? Are they operated by third parties? I think it'd be quite useful to understand.
Okay. Well, maybe before this, let me check. Yeah, this one. So the user or the brand consumers, they're disposing their waste or the PCPs to the scavengers, or we call them pelestari, the local waste collectors. So they earn some points that can be redeemed to the F&B merchants, and we currently also working with Grab, to as a Grab Food for Grab Food vouchers, and also we're working with this multiple F&B merchants to give discounts to our users. And the scavengers, they're the one, or the pelestari, they're the one who gets the value of the PCPs that collected. So they sell it to the nearest checkpoints. Basically, they have these options, the pricing options, which checkpoints that gives better price. So, and we always make sure in every cities that the buying price between checkpoints to the pelestari or the scavengers is always higher than any other market price at that city. And the checkpoints will sell it to the collection centers. And the collection centers, the one who got this sorting facilities, and they also acting as the price controllers, but we're giving them the price recommendation using AI, of course, based on the current virgin material price. And after that, the collection center will sell it to the recycling industry and so on. So that's the process. Regarding the collection center, the certified collection center, well, actually we're using this third-party certification programs for them to get the certificates. And currently we're working with only one collection center in every city that currently we're running on. The one in Makassar and the other one is in Denpasar.
And Andi, just the users, are they individuals? Are they F&B outlets? Are they a variety of?
Yeah, well, as per now, our user is the households or the personal users. So because we're aiming for, the personal waste generators, we call them that, because that's where the PCP come from, the waste come from. So we're trying to to reduce the pollution of the PCP into a trash bin that goes to the landfill, of course. But with this kind of solution, we're also increasing the quality, the collection quality of the PCP itself.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to come back to you in a minute with some other questions. Michael, can I get back to you? You're now looking at expanding into the Asia market. Can you give me some idea of the challenges you're facing here in terms of access to data relative to the UK, and where you're seeing potentially some of the greatest interest in Asia or Southeast Asia? You're on mute.
Okay, there you go. Zoom gloom.
Yeah,
yeah, we absolutely see Southeast Asia as a really, really good market for what we're doing, because there's clearly a lot of work going on, both from the point of view of companies like Andi's, and there's a lot of innovation. There's a lot of work happening on the sort of if you like, the harder sort of infrastructure level in terms of new investments in recycling capacity, sort of new players coming into the market. There is we are seeing a sort of some of the regulators who are sort of starting to kind of look at it as well. So from that point of view, we see actually the region as being a really, really interesting and potentially a very sort of fast growing market for what you might call waste tech or smart waste. So that's the first thing. The next thing then for us is like any other company, tech company that's trying to break into new markets. We accept the data landscape's going to be very different. So there's going to be, because you've got different regulations, you've got different commercial models, you've got different models of waste management. Clearly, the data landscape's going to be different in different countries. So it then comes back to just basically developing commercial partnerships, which is basically what we'd be trying to do, whether we were selling widgets or whether we were selling, some kind of consultancy service. It's all about finding the right partnerships and building the right relationships with companies that can basically unlock some of that data. We don't need to have a perfect digital picture of all of that material to start with. I mean, so even in the UK, there are still challenges with some of the sort of quality of some of the sort of reference data and some of the sort of live movement data. So we accept that data quality is always going to be an issue, whether it's in Europe, the US, Southeast Asia, Middle East, wherever it might be. So really where our starting point is building those kind of commercial relationships, whether that be with the waste producers or a regulator or a player who's operating in the kind of recycling sector. Okay. And that's how we approach it.
In the UK, do you have any clients in the consumer product sector?
Yes.
If so, how are you working with them, and what sort of results or benefits are they seeing?
Yeah, so I mentioned the project with SAP, which is sort of built around a sort of another project where we'd set out to build what we call a waste and resources map for Scotland, a sort of live view of kind of waste flows across Scotland. So that project has brought in Coca-Cola European partners, a brewery called Brewdog, who I think have a footprint in Southeast Asia, and a company called DS Smith, which is a huge global manufacturer of sort of cardboard packaging. So what they've all got slightly different sort of requirements. So Coca-Cola clearly are very interested in understanding what happens to those kind of post-consumer flows of particularly PET and other materials. So it's really getting that understanding in order that they can then make interventions in that downstream material system in order to improve levels of recovery. And clearly, they have a global footprint. So, clearly those interventions are going to be different based on different countries. But the first thing they want to understand is, what does that, if you like, what does that map actually look like at the moment? For someone like a Brewdog, it's very much driven by their ambitions around net zero. So they have kind of huge ambitions around sort of, driving carbon emissions out of their sort of production processes. So that's a big driver for them. And clearly waste is linked into the whole picture on carbon emissions. If you think about, global carbon emissions, a lot of those emissions are directly resulting from the production and the consumption and the use of goods and materials and packaging. So that's a big driver for them. And then for someone like a manufacturer like a DS Smith, it's about understanding efficiencies, it's about cost efficiencies, it's about resource efficiencies. So they've all got a sort of range of different reasons why they would want to get a much better handle on what that sort of materials kind of flow actually looks like.
Okay. Maybe a bit of a cheeky question for you, Michael. Until recently, the UK was exporting waste to Southeast Asia. Is your system able to track that? Yeah, so where there are exports, clearly, yeah, we can, we will pull that data in. And so we do see, material that's being exported, particularly, obviously there's quite a bit of material exported to Europe for as refuse derived fuel, etc. And clearly, though,
since 2018 and since China, announced its policy on imports, that not just for the UK, but for Europe and the US, clearly that's been a real challenge in terms of actually then identifying new capacity to handle and process that material that previously, of course, was exported. So again, we think we play into that, because actually, how can you plan new capacity? How can you make investment decisions? How can you, sort of drive these kind of optimizations in the system unless you've got a better handle on the data and what that and a better trust in terms of the data that's available to you. So we think that helps to kind of drive what we're doing.
And can I ask, here in Indonesia, as Andy pointed out, most of the waste ends up, well, a lot of the waste goes to the landfill and it's not sorted. If these waste shipments were tracked, you wouldn't be able to, you wouldn't be able to tell what's the component of the waste shipment, how much plastic, how much metals, how much organics.
Yeah, well, yeah, it depends. Well, currently we only working with this certain type of post-consumer packaging.
Sorry, Andy. I was asking Michael if how to deal with that problem here, where waste is generally not sorted.
Yeah. Well, actually, Ainsley, it's a problem in the UK as well. So it's not just, it's not just a sort of the Southeast Asia issue. Yes. Going back to that slide where I showed, if you like, a schematic of the waste system, which clearly is literally just a schematic representation. But one of the big challenges, particularly for looking at post-consumer waste flows, is the fact that material is mixed. So the PET bottles, or the aluminium cans, the cardboard are all mixed in those bins. So this is where the data science bit comes in. It's about, it's about building a level of confidence in what we're actually looking at in the absence of a perfect digital footprint for all of those individual sort of items of packaging or all of those individual materials. So that's a challenge, a fundamental challenge across the whole waste system, kind of globally, not just in the region. And then, but picking up on what Andy does, we pull in data from many different sources. So where we've got really good data, for example, Andy will have really good data on individual packaging and sorted waste, etc. So where we can access that data, we can bring that into our modeling. That helps us to improve the modeling that we can then do to say, okay, we think that material consists of X, Y, and Z. It's not a perfect picture, because to do that, you'd have to literally pull everything apart and count it. But where we pull some of that data in, it helps us to improve what we can then say about that material. So fundamentally, we're trying to build a sort of a better level of kind of trust in that, or a better version of the waste truth in the, where basically there's very little information, sort of previously. Okay.
But Ichsan, your revenue stream, am I right in thinking it's the consumer brands that are paying for the data?
Correct. Yes.
And
we charge per piece for that one.
Yeah.
For every single piece that we collect, we charge them for it. Yes.
And they're paying for that because of the government regulation for them to be transparent and or try to report how much waste they're producing.
Yes. Yes.
And in terms of the collection, some of these big brands you're working with are quite powerful organizations. Do they try and monopolize the collection of their products?
Yeah, well, actually, as Octopus, we're seeing this, because our solution is connect the brands to collect their post-consumer packaging. So we didn't try to, to limit our movement right now, because, to connect with only one single brand is just to limit our revenue stream. So yeah, that's not what's on our minds right now. So yeah, we're not going through that one. So we're currently also having talks with some other brands. We're currently working with 2 FMCG brands, and hopefully we're going to onboard another brands as well.
Okay, and do you see your solution expanding to other waste categories? I understand at the moment you're primarily focused on PET. And if you do expand to other waste categories, I see that you track everything by piece, but say, for example, move into paper or flexible plastics or whatever, it's not that easy to track it by piece, and certainly not easy to track it by piece and brand and report back to the brands in that way. How would you tackle, are you interested in expanding into other forms of waste, and how would you address the reporting in that respect?
Yeah, well, currently, since we're only collecting the PET bottles, it is because currently we only connected to PET recycling industry. But when we could connect to any other type recycling materials or recycling industry, any other type of PCPs, we surely that this could be the solution, because currently all of the stakeholders right now, the Pelestari, the checkpoints, and the collection centers, all of them is doing this standard or the SOP from the industry. So yeah, they're just following it. And if we want to add any other type of plastic materials, we just need to add it up in the user apps or the our consumer brand apps, and they will put it per piece. It doesn't matter if it has to be 100 pieces in one single orders. So yeah, I think it's possible for doing that right now. But for organic one or any other type of post-consumer product like cardboard or any metal and any other materials is quite challenging for us. But so that's why we're focusing for this type of plastics and any other certain type of plastic as well. But yeah, as I said before, because currently we only connected to PET recycling industry, so that's why we only collect PET right now.
Okay, just out of curiosity, you started off the business in Makassar, and the PET that's collected in Makassar, where is it ending up for recycling?
Yeah, well, before Octopus in 2018, when we are doing our research, there are 8 layers of collection layers that are trading brokers, or how you say it, the waste brokers that currently doing these businesses in Makassar. And all of them sending the recycling materials goes to Surabaya, so goes to another cities before going to the recycling industry. And it costs a lot, so much, because, you know, in every single layers, they want to gain some profit, of course. So this caused the innovation process. And when we connect to local waste stakeholders, well, it's quite challenging, but we got help from the local foundation called Yayasan Peduli Pemulung in Sulawesi. So yeah, we got help from them to connect to local waste stakeholders, and then we give them a proof that we increase the income for the local waste stakeholders, especially the local waste collectors. So yeah, that's why the ecosystem loves our app.
So it's interesting. So there's enough value in the waste value chain to justify currently to have all these layers and justify the logistics cost of shipping from Makassar to Surabaya for recycling.
Yeah. And the previous 8 layers of them, we didn't kill their businesses. Actually, we connect all of them into one single stakeholders as our checkpoints. And we, as I said before, that we also connect with this one collection center that, you know, that doing all of this sorting facilities or handling and shipping. All the PCPs goes to the recycling industry. So yeah, it's on their roles in our ecosystem.
Thank you. There's a question here from Joseph Huang by Ichsan, which I think is really quite relevant, particularly those that understand the waste collection system here. He's asking, do your client scavengers compete with other scavengers, private waste management and local government collection service for the PET bottles?
Yeah, well, technically we didn't want to compete with the local waste stakeholders. So that's why we try to connect and we try to integrate all of the local waste stakeholders. And as per today, we have 1,000 local waste collection businesses. And yeah, we're aiming to, to grow more local waste collection businesses as our checkpoints, of course. But with the private waste management right now in Indonesia is quite different, because all of the waste management is handled by the government itself. So we didn't have any private sectors for doing the waste management. So yeah, we didn't quite have this kind of challenge for us in here. And local government collection service for the PET bottles. Yeah, well, technically our scavengers or our plus study contents of the local waste collectors and also the government collection officers, and there is some students also, but we always make sure that we didn't do child labors in our stakeholders. So yeah, well, we connect all the stakeholders, so we didn't compete with the local one. So that's why, we grow organically in Makassar and in Bali also.
Okay, and there's another question here which is sort of related to that reverse logistics supply chain. What's the incentive for the collection centres to pay the trash at your recommended price?
Yeah, as I said before that we connect directly we're having this exclusive contracts with the recycling industry. We guarantee that they will buy directly to our collection center or source this type of PCP or the PET bottles only from our collection center in certain cities that we already running on. So the buying price is quite high, and of course the value added points that the collection center wants is based on the price. If the price higher, then yes, we can work together. So yeah, the better buying price, of course, that keep our collection center working and loving to work with us.
Okay, there's a couple of questions really on government policy here in Indonesia, and what recommendations or what adjustments you would like to see to the regulations to further encourage more recycling and greater speed of movement towards a circular economy. Do you have any views on that, Andy? And also, Michael, is there stuff that can be done in the UK in that respect? Is there more adjustment to the regulation to improve the overall process? We'll maybe start with you, Andy. Any views on the government policy regarding waste management?
Yeah, there are two things that that came up in my mind right now. The first one is the excise tax for the new plastic bottles. So the government will give incentives for brands that doing certain percentage of recyclings. And the second one is the DRS, or deposit return system, for the brands also. So if there is these two regulation in Indonesia, of course, it will accelerate the circular economy, and of course, it will accelerate our platform as well.
Yeah, definitely. If there's a regulation that's going to mandate a certain percentage of recycled content in the bottles, that'll be a huge boost to the recycling sector.
Yes.
Michael, is there similar regulations in the UK mandating that?
Yeah, so of course in the UK we're still subject to EU regulation for a few weeks yet. And clearly there's a huge amount of work being done at EU level around the circular economy and mandating recycled content, etc., etc. In the UK, there's a new waste strategy, and again, there's a big push on extended producer responsibility. Part of that as well is mandatory digital tracking of all waste movements, which is obviously where we sort of come into that. But also, we are just at the point where a DRS has been sort of mandated for England and for Scotland. So there'll be separate DRS systems. So we haven't actually got one yet. So we're still in the same scenario where, the DRS we think will definitely clearly bring some transparency and efficiency into that system, and hopefully help to drive more recovery of that material. But then there's a whole piece of work, isn't there, that is partly driven by regulation, I guess, is around substitute materials, around designing goods and packaging for recovery, for recycling, for remanufacturing, etc. And that's also sort of kind of happening in the background as well.
Okay, I mean, if I may comment on regulations here, there's a lot of regulation regarding waste to energy, tipping fees, feed-in tariffs, but they're quite narrowly interpreted, and some of these projects actually may benefit from not just waste to energy, but more recycling component of the waste. But it's unclear as to whether or not the tipping fees would apply, because the definition seems to be quite narrow to waste to energy. So one of the things I would like to see is the government expand the incentive, the access to the tipping fees to include recycling, reprocessing of waste for other uses. Because as long as the waste doesn't end up in the landfill, it's to everyone's benefit. And I think that would also help boost the circular economy. Andy, a bit of a cheeky question for you. A couple of people have asked, are you looking for investors?
Yeah, well, yeah, as any other startup, currently we're also doing some fundraising until the end of January. And yeah, to expand our services, of course, and expand our ecosystem to another cities in Indonesia. And of course, we're expecting to connect with another aggregators or another recycling industry that could collect another type of materials. So yeah, we're doing some fundraising right now, and the progress is quite challenging for us, but it's still progressing. But yeah, we'll see about that.
There's a question, a very long question here from Peggy King, and I'll try and distill it down. One of the points she's asking about is there buy-in from the local government and local authorities to try and support this? I think in a number of cases, the answer to that is yes. Is there interest from the private sector? I think the answer to that is, I'm definitely seeing it, yes. Maybe a question for you, Michael. You see, is any of the waste management, the waste recycling, is it, can you get carbon credits?
I think increasingly it's going to become important, and I mean, that's certainly something that, as I mentioned, certain companies are seeing it as a part of their overall approach to net zero and to measuring their carbon emissions, because clearly the movement of that material and the ultimate fate of that material, there is a nexus there in relation to carbon. So I think there's no doubt that there is a strong and growing link between, how much waste material you generate and what you do with that material, and the sort of the carbon profile of your organization.
Maybe even possibly in the future, plastic credits.
Indeed.
Yeah, another question here from Ichsan, which maybe Andy can deal with. Mm-hmm. And it relates more to the brands you're working with. Are they assisting in the public relations exercise to help promote the collection and recycling their marketing campaigns, their communication? Are they adding value in that respect?
Yeah. Well, actually, the brands that currently working with us right now, they're promoting us and they're helping us, to acquire more users or the brand consumers. Because, yeah, as you may know that currently recycling in Indonesia is quite, it's not something that daily activities for us. And to acquire more user, we need some education directly from the brand itself to their consumers. And that they're helping us right now.
A couple of comments here from Joseph Wang. He thinks the tax on recycled plastic Southeast Asia may be difficult due to the political strength of the plastic manufacturing companies, and the virgin plastic, I'm assuming he means the virgin PET is relatively cheap. That tends to be somewhat linked to the oil price. But I think we discussed that if the regulation starts to require more recycled content in the packaging, that will change the playing field. And I believe that some of the recycled PET, food grade PET in Asia actually ends up in Europe at the moment, because Europe's got a shortfall. And there's definitely a demand for some component of the recycled flexible packaging, whether going to tackle or whatever, demand for that in Europe. So there are emerging global markets in recycled PET and recycled flexible packaging that could sustain some of the recyclers when they start here, if the market and the financials here don't justify it. Though I do think eventually most governments will start to mandate and regulate for recycled content in the packaging, which would be a good thing. Be a very good thing for Andy's business.
Definitely.
Business as well, Michael. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We've only got a couple of minutes, so it'd be good. I would just like to invite you both to make some final comments, and maybe give your hopes and aspirations for the future. Michael?
All right, okay. You sort of pick up. Thanks, Ainsley. So yeah, no, I think, again, I'll just sort of, I suppose, repeat what I said. I mean, I think generally speaking, if you think about the circular economy, if that's really what we're trying to all work towards, whatever that actually looks like, whether it's pure reuse and remanufacturing, or there is a sort of recycling component to it, you cannot avoid the need for, number one, better data, and number two, better ways to generate sort of insights and answers from that data. So, data is one thing, but actually being able to understand the quality of that data and then make decisions from that data is something else. But I think we cannot remove that data or digital aspect from our ambition to actually sort of drive a sort of global circular economy.
Okay, Andy, quite a few people are asking, do you intend to expand into other parts of Indonesia, particularly Jakarta?
Yeah, well, in our plan, actually, on the first quarter of 2021, we're planning to expand our services in Jakarta, and hopefully in Bandung as well. But and my last statement is, for doing this circular economy in Indonesia, or doing recycling in Indonesia, is quite challenging for now. But of course, if there is some regulation from the government that's supporting us for doing this, so yeah, it will definitely give more impact to the environment, and of course to the social economy as well.
Yeah, can you also maybe just comment, when I first spoke to you, you mentioned some of the brands that you're working with, and most of them, I believe, were multinational. Are you also working with some of the big local brands?
Yeah, well, they're approaching us right now, but yeah, we didn't have quite a contract or any contract yet with them.
They probably will approach you if the regulation comes in.
Yes.
That'll be interesting to see if that happens. Michael, thank you very much for joining us from all the way from Edinburgh. Andy, I'll see you soon in Bali.
Thank you.
It's fascinating to me to see that from across the world there are technologies emerging which I think can probably work together as well, the sounds of it, to address what is a real crisis situation in terms of waste, not just in Indonesia, but across the world. So I'd like to wish you both the very best of luck. Hope to see more of you, your businesses develop, and maybe we'll get you back again in a year's time and just see how the playing fields change in Indonesia and what developments have come to fruition. So once again, thank you very much. Thank you everyone else for dialing in today. This has been recorded, and Asti will certainly be sending out to everyone that's registered, the link to everyone that's registered. I think eventually it'll be on the BritCham YouTube site. Thank you.
Thank you, Ainsley. Thanks.
Great.
Thank you, Ainsley. Bye.
Thank you.